think one of the biggest pieces is building rapport with the students. If they don't trust you, if they don't feel comfortable around you, they're not going to be inclined to listen to you, put forth an effort, or even just try, depending on the age, or even show up. So I think one of the biggest things for me was building rapport with students, and then not being afraid to embarrass myself, not being afraid to do something that was going to fail, because a lot of teaching is learning while doing. So don't think you're going to go into a classroom, you're going to have your lesson plan, you're going to be prepared. I had so many lessons. I was like, we're going to do this for 5 minutes, this for 10 minutes, never works out. It's always like the thing I think they're going to do quick takes them forever. The thing I think that's going to take forever, they do in 5 minutes. So.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're looking after yourselves. We're back with another episode of season 4. Pick up the mic, bringing on amazing guests, talented speakers, and essentially, giving you information about key support services or different routes, I guess, after university. And as always, like I say, we bring on amazing guest speakers, but we've even got an amazing speaker today. And as I always say, you guys, you listened to my voice for many episodes at this point, probably bored of hearing my voice. So I'm going to pass over to our guest speaker today because she's going to tell you just a bit more about herself before we dive in. So over to you.
Hello, I'm happy to be here. My name is Jash, and I am a digital nomad right now. I taught English abroad for 3 years after finishing university. And now I work completely remote. I love teaching, but I like being in my house even more, not having to wake up with an alarm. So I'm completely remote, living in Mexico, and I prefer to slow travel. So I'm spending a lot of time in one country as opposed to a bunch of different countries. So I get to see more. I like getting the local experiences, figuring out what life really is like in another country, not just I'm here for a week for a little trip, gonna get drunk, do all these crazy things. So that's kind of what I am about. And I also do social media. I work as a freelancer, and then I manage my own social media account as well. And not really an influencer, but it's an aspiration at some point to not have to pay for everything myself. So I'm happy to be here and happy to share my story.
Thank you so much. And it's great to have someone who's traveled the globe like you have on the podcast. I think you're our most traveled individual on the podcast. So it's great to have you as our first person to do that. I guess before we officially start, you mentioned that you're a digital nomad. And I know there might be some people thinking, what is this? So I guess before we officially start with the questions, what is a digital nomad?
That's a great question, and a question I get all the time. And it's basically somebody that works completely remote and they just move around. So I have the liberty of not having to go into an office, not having to be in a certain time zone. So I have the freedoms now to work from anywhere. So I worked in the States, now in Mexico, and then when my visa gets up, I don't know, I'll have to go somewhere else.
Wow. Thank you. And that's great to know, I guess what that is, because I know especially there might be some people listening and they might be thinking, yeah, I understand that. Or like that would be the dream, not having to wake up at a certain time or, having to go into the office and things like that. So yeah, that's amazing that you get to do that, and you've got an amazing journey. So yeah, I guess there's no better time for us to then dive right in to the first official question. So for the first official question of today's episode, we want to know, what did you do after graduating?
Well, it's complicated, and it's always people give me a confused face. I went to Tuskegee University in Alabama, and I studied mechanical engineering, and I finished my degree a semester early. And so I always wanted to study abroad, but never had the time because engineering is too hard to be able to take off time and try to learn it in another language. I barely understood it in English. So being able to have that extra time at the end, I decided to do a volunteer program in Italy where I taught English as a foreign language for 3 months. I lived with an Italian family. I really local, not anywhere near the touristy area. Nobody really spoke English. My family did and my co-teachers, but if I was going out in the streets, I was like, ciao. And that was the extent of what I had. But after that, I just fell in love with teaching, fell in love with living abroad, being able to spend more than a weekend, a week or two in another country. And so I just never stopped After going to Italy for 3 months, I went to Senegal and did the same thing, volunteer teaching for 5 months, working with high school students and some middle school. And then I decided I needed to start getting money. My parents agreed with that idea. So I found a paid position in South Korea and I taught there for a year. After that, I went to an international school in Haiti and I taught there for about 8 or 7 months in 4th and 5th grade. And then I decided to be free. I loved working with the kids, but working in the office, working in an official traditional 9 to 5 comes with a lot of other things. You may enjoy what you came to do, but you have to deal with a bunch of other things outside of that. And I was just kind of over it after that time. So that's why I became a digital nomad now.
Oh, wow. That's really great. And yeah, 100%. I agree with you. It can, I guess, especially, from 2 years of like online stuff, it can be kind of tedious and a bit tiring to continually go through like the cycle of, online meetings from like 9 to 5. And then you don't really feel like you've got like time for you. So I definitely agree with that. And it's great to hear, how you traveled the world and it wasn't necessarily something that was the plan from the get-go. It was just something that you developed on the way, and that's something that we always love to say on the podcast, that it's you sometimes just have to go where life takes you. Sometimes not necessarily, we're not saying like don't plan, obviously planning's good, but yeah, sometimes you just have to go with the flow and just go where you feel like you need it.
And my father kind of had the same path. He studied mechanical engineering all the way through a master's degree. He worked in it longer than me. I didn't work in it at all, but he worked in engineering for, I think, about 10 years and then decided to teach and coach football. So I guess it wasn't my plan, but maybe the seed was planted early through my father and just watching him. He loves teaching. He loves coaching, being around the students. And so I had support in that aspect. He was like, okay, I understand. I've been there. Not in another country, but we can relate.
Yeah, and that's so great that your family supported you on this, because I think but I guess before we go into the next question, it's so important to have that family support, even friend support as well, because especially when it feels like you're maybe not like a 90-degree turn, and you're going on a completely different direction, but it's, if you're not doing something, especially like you said, that when you graduated, you did mechanical engineering, and then to go into teaching and teaching abroad, that's not necessarily what everyone, would expect for you if you did the course. But yeah, no, 100%. I think that's amazing that, your family supported you. They're just like, you've got this, and, look where you are now. And yeah, I'm sure they're very proud of you. Because yeah, like I said at the start, it's amazing, the journey that you've done and all the things that you've done. And so yeah, thank you very much for that.
It's definitely like that aspect of having someone to support you. Like, I live abroad, so having somewhere to go home to when I go home. My mom is always like, you always have a bed here. My dad's like, can you please come visit me? So just having that support, it wasn't always 100%, but after a while, people say, okay, maybe she's not crazy. Maybe she does know something about what she's doing. So 100% so appreciative of my parents and my family for supporting me on this unconventional lifestyle journey.
No, and that's so great. And I guess that kind of leads on to our next question, because you mentioned it before, obviously you've been doing teaching, and I guess we want to know, why did you decide to go into teaching?
I just knew I wanted to go abroad. And I honestly was looking for a job in engineering, and that was one of my criteria. Like, I want to work abroad. Can you put me in your overseas offices? And I continuously heard, we can after 5 years, or we can after you've been with the company for X amount of time. And I'm a Gen Z. I want to have my answers now. I want that instant, this is what I want to do. I don't want to waste time. I don't want to wait till retirement. This is my plan. And so I just started looking for other opportunities, because engineering just wasn't giving me what I wanted at the time. They say your 20s are your prime, travel. It's like, I'm trying, but so then I just started doing a lot of research and saw continuously teaching abroad just kept coming up, travel for free, people will pay you, you'll have a job, you have that support system. Some countries pay very good money and you don't have to pay for your apartment, or so there's a lot of perks to it. And so I just started looking everywhere, deep diving into internet, YouTube, bloggers, everything. and it kind of just was the best option. I wasn't so sold on going to Italy, but the program just matched what I needed. I wanted to go back in time for graduation, so the dates lined up. I didn't have to go through the visa process because it was less than the 3-month maximum we have as Americans. So it lined up, and then I just decided not to stop because the engineering, they just weren't doing it for me. So that's why I ended up just staying with teaching.
Wow, and that's really great. And I think, like you said, that's something that my sister raised with me. She said, like, I guess young people nowadays, I guess, have that thinking of, you know, I can essentially, you know, the sky's the limit. I can do what I want. You know, even if it's unconventional, even if it seems that, you know, this isn't, you know, it doesn't make sense to anyone, I can still go out and I can try these new things. I can do these new things. And I think that that's something that, you know, I guess we've always got to be grateful for. And like you said, I think it is a key lesson to have, that, you know, you can just go out, try things, do things, see how it goes. And yeah, I definitely agree with you that teaching can just have, it is, you know, it's always nice to, I guess, impact someone else and impact their life. But I know also from personal experience, I'm not saying I'm a teacher, but I have worked with young people through, I did a year of work during my undergraduate, and that was one of the things that I did. I worked with a team that essentially helped to promote, you know, science, technology, engineering, and maths with young people. And yeah, that was one of the you know, the amazing things of when you can, you know, show a child like some cool piece of technology and their mind just like blown because they're just like, I don't know how this works, or, you know, you're telling me I need to do this like by a certain time, and if I beat this time I can get like a treat, and they're just like, you know, thinking hard about how do I do this. Yeah, nothing I guess can replace those memories of like seeing someone just figure out, you know, a solution to a problem, and you're just like, wow, you know, it's a precious memory. And yeah, I was truly grateful to have that experience, and I'm sure you're the same.
Definitely. It's like a joke in the teaching world, I guess, that teaching keeps you young. Kids don't really understand the complexities of being an adult, so they don't really care about any of that. And so when you just see somebody like not afraid to fail or not afraid to jump off the slide, like just do these crazy things, it's just refreshing and kind of allows you to kind of go back to that youthfulness. And like, I play all day. I'm always joking, hiding behind the door to scare my mom. Like, I do all these things. Yeah, I feel like being around kids all the time kind of just kept that alive in me. And I don't plan on ever like growing up. I want to stay in my childlike ways. My mom is always telling me, you're an adult now, you know that, right? And I'm like, I disagree. I don't think so.
No, and that's interesting that you raised that, because it's not our, I guess for our listeners, not our mic check section just yet, but it is an interesting fact, because one of the things that I was learning about on my postgrad was what you were saying about, you know, this idea of getting adults to I guess essentially learn through play with children. And it was during the, I guess, 2020, so when a lot of the world was in lockdown, and they were talking about there was a project done in Italy where essentially this group of, I guess, actors from an acting company worked with young children to basically develop like an interactive like play session with some elderly people in a old people's home. And what was really interesting was, obviously, because of restrictions, the children weren't allowed to go inside. So all the old people essentially just went to like the front area and could see through the like glass windows and like what they were doing. And they, like the people were saying that it was just so amazing to see how like these elderly people who sometimes, you know, don't really smile a lot, or, you know, they weren't really engaged with the activities that they would normally do in the nursing home. They essentially like lit up when the children were there, and they were like doing stuff with them. I know in the UK there was, I've forgotten the name of the TV show, but there was a TV show that essentially looked at the same thing of like getting young people and old people together. And it was just like so funny seeing them like interact, and like, you know, the young people were like asking questions to the like, oh, you know, like, why don't you do this? Like you're saying, like young children just like don't overthink things. They just, you know, if they want to try something, they'll do it. If they feel like, you know, I wonder if I, you know, jumped off the slide at this point, what would happen? They'll go ahead and do it.
Exactly.
You know,
and they have no filter. Like they'll 100%. Ask you any question. I'm abroad. They're like, are you married? Do you have a kid? I'm like, how old are you? These are personal questions, but they don't know any of that. Like, why is your hair like that? Like, kids are asking me all these questions. I'm like, you really don't know what should and should not yet.
But yeah, no, that's definitely so precious, and it's something, like I said at the start, it's just something that you can only experience, and you can see how like amazing that is. And yeah, that leads us on to our next question, which is essentially, you've spoken about how you've traveled to different countries and you've done teaching in different countries, and essentially we just want to know, how is the style of teaching different in each of the countries that you've visited?
So I'll start and go in order. In Italy, learning another language, at least at my school, was a big thing because it was a language school. My students were learning English, French, Spanish. Some of them were learning Latin. So they were way beyond me, my one language, barely. But the style of teaching was a lot of the teacher wrote something on the board and then the students copied it and then they prepared for a test. And then they had some native speakers that would come in maybe once a week and do like some conversational skills. And so I came in and they said, can you get our students to speak? We want them to not be afraid to talk. So I came, okay, we're going to play bingo and then we're going to do this. So I kind of switched it up. And so they were really excited to have my class because English was, for most of them, their favorite language to learn. But it was just the way that they had to learn was very not engaging and just kind of boring for a subject that you really like, and then you don't get to have those times to listen to music or try to watch a video. I had clips from The Office. We're trying to figure out, okay, what words did you hear? What's going on? Why is Dwight yelling at everybody? So just things like that were just a way to kind of get them to fall in love with learning the language and not just studying for a test. In Senegal, it was kind of different because there weren't as many, I guess, of the resources you would think would be in a classroom. So there weren't the technology things. So we had to kind of figure out how to engage our students without having an internet connection or not having some of those things. So we did a lot of activities like, let's go outside and write down all the things outside you can identify. But in Senegal, the grading system was very different. They had about a few tests for every period. And so if you didn't do well on one of three, it was like, okay, that's kind of the end for you. So it was very much students wanting to know, like, is this going to be on the test? When is our test? And I feel like that's kind of everywhere. People are so concerned about the grade and not so much the content, not so much learning, but just getting that note for their parents or for university applications and things like that, which is kind of heartbreaking as a teacher because like I have all this fun stuff to teach you and you're only worried about what I'm going to put on this test in 3 weeks. In South Korea was again like that. There's that stereotype that students in Asia are like so school driven. And I kind of saw that as well. I worked in a academy. So my students went to school during the day, regular hours. And then after school, they came to me for extra lessons. And so my kid has already been in school all day. And now he's going to probably one of 5 or 6 different academies he has after school. So the kids are often exhausted, but they still know like this is important. And so again, there was that steady feeling of, is this going to be on the test? Do I need to study this? Is this important? What does this even mean? So it was that, but I also felt like in Korea, I worked with kindergarteners and they have no concept of any of that. I had older kids that were still in that mindset, but my kindergartners were like, there was a lot of language barrier, but they were just so excited. In the beginning, we were just playing together because I had students that were basically the equivalent of like 4 and maybe even 3 years old. And they're already in school. I'm trying to get them to ride. I'm like, they don't even have these motor skills yet. We're just going to slide and play and listen to songs and dance. So it was very fun. But also when you're teaching kindergarten, it's kind of, you're always on. You can't give them an assignment and kind of sit down and do something else. You're always watching because why is this student under the desk? Why is this student taking off their mask? So it's the pandemic time. So it was a lot of moving parts. But I really did enjoy teaching kindergarten because they're just chaotic. And that's kind of fun for me because I'm very animated and childlike. So if I was walking and banged my toe and made an audible sound, now the whole class, like they're doing the same thing. And I'm like, don't go home and do that. That's not what you're supposed to learn from me. And then in Haiti, it was also very different because I worked at a school that was very expensive. it was an American school in a country where not everybody has access to education. And then even education in Haiti is overwhelmingly expensive for a normal family. Like going to school is a privilege. You need to have the money to pay the fees. And it's not like in other countries where it's mandatory for a student, it's free. And you can pay to go to a private school. Most schools cost money. And then on top of that, you're putting an American school taught in English. So I had kids that were of the more privileged status. And so a lot of them didn't have that motivation to kind of do their work, but it was also still very fun to have classes with them. As far as getting them to do work, sometimes it was like pulling teeth. They weren't as like excited to do work, but I had so much fun in Italy, not in Italy, in Haiti, because it was students that looked like me. I was able to relate with them on that level. We're listening to Haitian music. We're incorporating different things. So it was just a great time for just that, to build that connection with my students. So each country is very different. And I feel like each one can kind of learn from the other and kind of improve each other, because overall, I feel like the way students are taught is not the way they receive information. This idea that I'm going to tell you something and then in 3 weeks you need to remember it. And then at the end of the semester, you need to remember it again. Like, we don't teach in a way that kind of lets them learn, because as teachers, there's all this pressure that they need to pass the standardized test. They need to achieve at least this. And so you have to find that balance between getting things done for the benefit of the student and getting things done for administration and all these other people that are like secondary in my mind. But I'm not a teacher anymore, so I guess I can say that.
But no, that's amazing to hear. And it's like you said, it is really interesting that each, I guess some people might say it makes sense, but it is interesting that in each country that, there's always a different teaching style. But like you said, it's that core element of, I guess, essentially teaching these children life lessons. And I think, like you said, it is really important to get that, I guess, main theme of making learning fun, that they'll essentially like learn stuff while they do it. And I've mentioned this book before, and it'll be on the screen for everyone watching. But it's called Michael Rosen's Book of Play. I had to read it for an assignment for uni. But what was really interesting about that book is it essentially talks about what some of the stuff that you were mentioning there of, how do we get young children to learn while playing? But it's not like, I don't know, you sit them down and, it's that typical, like you said, like the lesson of you only think about what's going to be on the exam and not necessarily about like making it fun. So it's, people will just retain the knowledge because they remember the activity. It was essentially just talking about that. And it was really interesting because he mentioned that, students will, like, I guess like he mentioned that I know some people have done this before, that, like the ways to remember things for exams, he was saying that, we need to make that even like fun. So he was saying that when you, so essentially he said that when it comes to like revision or whether it comes to teaching, making the steps like of learning fun. So thinking about whether it's, you use a certain activity or, like you said, you get them to go on the slides and stuff. It is very important to doing that. And like you were saying about like about adults, like we do as a tendency, I guess you were saying even for adults, like forget that, we once were children. So what did we find fun, doing at school? Was it that, like you said, like just, we were on slides, we were doing stuff like that, and the teacher would be like, oh, like, I want you guys to like jump from one side of the room to the other and then measure how far the distance is. And then you can learn about like maths that way. Or, was it that, you were asked to like write poems or write songs and that's, you doing English. And I think, like you said, it's just like making it not obvious, because even in the book he made like a funny joke in it that his I think his niece essentially like she's very young, and he said that she like ran the room and she like made a song out of like random words. It's like the whole like jumble, like I couldn't recite it myself because it just wouldn't make sense, but he was saying that to her that song meant something. So he was saying as I guess as educators or as teachers, that it's the same thing with us, that we can essentially learn things by making, reflecting that, like you said, everyone as an individual learns at a different level. Some people prefer, looking at stuff and writing it down. Some people, I know, like, this is me. I honestly prefer like watching or listening to stuff. And it just makes it more engaging and more fun. So yeah, I think that's great to see that, like you said, that even though on a level, every country teaches differently. That overarching theme of making it engaging for the students is I guess, always present in all these different countries. So yeah.
For me, like, to learn, I was I needed to make a mnemonic. Like, if I memorize something, okay, this is cat and this is what it stands for. All I have to do is remember cat, and then I will connect those dots. And then also in teaching, there's just so many varying levels. Every student is different. So in one classroom, you may have some students that are way above level that should probably be in another class, but you can't really fight for that as a teacher. And because teachers aren't really listened to as much as they should be. So you'll have a student that is way above, and then a student that needs a lot of extra help. And then it's kind of up to you to figure out, how can I keep this advanced student not bored, and then work with this other student that needs that one-on-one time. So it's a balancing act, and teachers really don't get the recognition that they need. But I think since the pandemic and kids were at home, parents were realizing, what are you doing? Like, I need to send you back to school because this is not for me. Teachers, please take them back.
No, that's so true. And I guess that nicely leads on to our next question, because there might be some people listening thinking, wow, not only were you traveling around the world, but you've also been teaching at the same time. And they might be thinking whether they want to do the exact same thing, or if they just want to, get into teaching as a whole. What's one bit of advice that you would say is very valuable for them to have?
I think one of the biggest pieces is building rapport with the students. If they don't trust you, if they don't feel comfortable around you, they're not going to be inclined to listen to you, put forth an effort, or even just try, depending on the age, or even show up. So I think one of the biggest things for me was building rapport with students, and then not being afraid to embarrass myself, not being afraid to do something that was going to fail, because a lot of teaching is learning while doing. So don't think you're going to go into a classroom, you're going to have your lesson plan, you're going to be prepared. I had so many lessons. I was like, we're going to do this for 5 minutes, this for 10 minutes, never works out. It's always like, the thing I think they're going to do quick takes them forever. The thing I think that's going to take forever, they do in 5 minutes. So I think definitely building rapport, and then being afraid to fail. One of the biggest things that connected me to my students in Italy, because I didn't have a lot of experience, I was kind of just seeing what worked. And at the end of each lesson, I took some words or some phrases from our lesson and had them teach it to me in Italian. So now they're seeing their teacher learn another language. I'm butchering the pronunciation. I don't know which word goes where. And so they're thinking in their mind, like, okay, my teacher is terrible at my language. I don't have to be perfect in her language either. So just being open to not being perfect. Nobody thinks that you're going to be perfect at it. And a lot of times you plan, and then life just happens. You go in the classroom, the kids don't feel like doing anything today. Okay, you got to think of something on the go, or the kids are super engaged, but you had something chill planned. So it's definitely just learning on the go and not being afraid to kind of just fail forward.
Yeah, and like you were saying, that I guess I've got two parts of that. So the first part, like you were saying about learning with the children is definitely key, because like you said, I know some of the events that we were doing with especially like you said, with young children, like sometimes when we did like these workshops and we were saying, oh, we need you guys to figure out how to get around this map from A to B, C to D, and in this order, and you have to make your like robot go this way. And then some of them, you especially like younger classes, you might think, okay, these guys, it'll take them maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20. And then in 5 minutes, they're just like, yeah, we're done. And you're just like, wow, okay. And then like you said, with some older classes, they might be thinking, oh, actually, it might take a bit longer. You might say, oh, that's actually going to take them 10 minutes, but that's actually going to take most of the class 20. And yeah, I think like you said, each individual class is definitely different. And I think, like you said, it's that building rapport with them. I know that was one of the things that we, when I was leading workshops, that's one of the things that I always love doing is, when you'd make a competition out of stuff and you'd be like, all right, guys, we'll say it together and do stuff like this. They always get involved and they always find it fun. Even like you said, doing, whether it's like you do competitions, you know, with yourself and like a member of the class, you know, they always like that because I guess every child likes to have the right to say, yes, I was the one that embarrassed the teacher in front of everyone. So yeah, so I definitely agree. And I know even, and I guess there's a second thing of like my personal experience with teachers, you know, for me at least was, like you said, that the fact that a lot of them would connect with you, and sometimes it wasn't even like just stuff, I guess, that's in the program. Like you said, like one of the things I loved about some of my teachers is they would always like make things engaging. So like I did drama, I guess when I was at secondary school, and like one of the things that happened there was that like my teacher did this activity which was really fun. It's called Stop the Bus. Essentially it'd be like just, you know, two people would start a scene. It could be on whatever they wanted, and then one of the, like someone in the audience has to shout stop the bus, and then they go into that scene, and then they can turn it into like whatever they wanted. And it's all supposed to like show you how like improvisation, you can just like improvise things on the spot. And I think especially like when I was in younger you know, in younger years at secondary school, that was one of the like best things to do, because not only did it help you, I guess, build rapport with the teacher and your classmates, but it also kind of like, you know, people weren't upset if like if things got awkward. It just got really funny because people are just like, oh, I'm waiting for someone to like let me leave the scene. So yeah, so that's definitely key. And I know even like for my science lessons, like I had a science teacher who specialized in physics, and he always made like physics interesting. So he was saying, so he showed like documentaries or YouTube videos that like showed, you know, how could physics be applied in like the real world. So, you know, I guess looking at like, if someone is, you know, like as a musician, is a stage coordinator, and they're like putting in speakers at an event, like how can we ensure that everyone, you know, there's like that key area that no one's losing out sound, but everyone's hearing like the best sound possible. So I really like that. They're like, he never made, or they never made like teaching, like I guess, or learning, I should say rather, boring for me. And I think, like you said, it's just always about putting the students first, making the classes engaging, not like limiting them to stuff is always key.
And then on top of that, when you really connect to your students, when you learn about your students and their interests, you can kind of tailor the lessons. Like I had a class in Korea that they weren't really interested in much, but if we talked about food, they could talk the whole class. So every day we would talk about a different food and kind of relate it to whatever we're doing. So say we're talking about going on vacation. What are you packing to eat? What do you want to eat on vacation? So that they had those things that they wanted to connect to. And even though that's not the point of the lesson, like there's some aspect of something that is interesting to them. So you can kind of build your lessons in a way that you don't have to pull teeth to get engagement. You don't have to pull teeth to get them to participate by knowing what they're interested in.
Exactly. And I guess that nicely leads on to our final question for you, which is essentially, you know, this, and it's a bit of a hard one, but what's your favorite memories from like all your traveling? What's that one memory that you're just like, this is whenever I think about traveling, this is the memory for me?
I don't know if I have a specific memory, but in general, just connecting with people. I like to go to different countries, and whether I'm there for a short amount of time or a long amount of time, I want to connect and actually make a connection with either people there or somebody I'm traveling with. So in every country, I have people, basically. So like my host family in Italy, I lived with them for 3 months. When I was leaving, like we were all crying. My host was like, "You're my daughter now. Why are you leaving me?" They watched me graduate on TV. Like they did the streaming and watched me walk across the stage, and they called me on Christmas. So just making those connections everywhere I go. And then I always have like somewhere to go back to. So I like being able to slow travel, but sometimes you have these short trips. So even moving to Haiti was because of my trip in 2018, where I was there for a week, but I built those connections and like connected with people so that years later, I was like, you know, I'm looking for my next country. I don't know. It's like, oh, come back to Haiti. I know this school. They're probably looking. I was like, you know, that sounds fine. So then I ended up moving back to Haiti. So just making connections is really one of the best parts of travel for me. And then just being able to immerse in the culture, especially working with kids. They tell you all the tea. They tell you what's really going on. They're like, yeah, you know, this politician and, you know, this girl at school, they're telling you everything. So just really being able to make those connections with my students and then with people in the area is always my favorite part of traveling.
Yeah, and I think that's so true because I guess that links into everyone's favorite section, mic check. Which today I haven't got a fact for you, but a personal experience. So I thought it would be nice if I mentioned, my one of my travels myself. And yeah, it was essentially as a part of my course in 2019, we got to travel to Tenerife for a week. But I went for a week before with my sister, and I think, like you said, it's just like building those connections, immersing yourself in another culture is like really fun. And yeah, that trip was like amazing because like we got to see like dolphins and whales, and like we got to travel around the island and see like Tenerife as an island is crazy for it was really good because like I was saying, for geographical reasons, Tenerife is just amazing because like the north is like pouring with rainforest, like it's just like really cold sometimes, but it's also can be quite humid. But then in the south, it's just like dry desert and like I guess more like what you would expect from a really hot country. So it's like really weird because like when we traveled, like it was just like you didn't see it happen, but like what you were surrounded by like the sun, and you're just driving through, and the next thing you know, it's like pouring down like heavy rain, and everyone was just like, oh my gosh, like I guess that's why we needed raincoats. But yeah, I've really just liked that trip because like you said, I guess as like a group, as a like course, like it helped us to connect. We had like really good time connecting with our lecturers as well. But also, like you said, connecting with individuals on the island. Like we got to go to I think it was a banana plantation out there, and it was really interesting because we got to see like I guess how bananas are grown, like the how the banana industry works there. And yeah, that was just one of the things that I just really loved. It was really great to just have that experience. And yeah, I definitely would recommend going if you want to go, I definitely recommend you going. And if anyone's listening, I definitely would recommend that you go because yeah, it is really great. And I guess lastly, before we go on to passing the mic, is that it is like you said that I guess we like, especially because I mean where we were was a bit touristy, but I just felt like because we didn't necessarily do all the touristy things, so like we went to some museums that I guess aren't on the main ones on the island, and because I guess it is an island, that it was a lot more personal, like that's what me, my sister, and like the people on the course felt like, because you would see some people in the reception area, or you'd see people around the hotel that work there, and they'd recognize you and they'd be like, hey, how you doing, like you having a good time? And I'm just like, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Or you might go to the restaurant and they might be like, oh hey, we saw you here like last week, like how did you find the food, are you guys enjoying it? And I just felt like that was like really nice. And like you said, that's one of the great things about traveling. But yeah, we've now officially asked Yash all the questions, and I'm now going to pass over to her for everyone's favorite section, passing the mic. So Yash, I'm gonna ask if you could just let us know the question that you've prepared for me today.
I think you kind of just answered it. My question was, what do you think is the best thing about travel? But if it's different from what you said.
I guess the only other thing I'd just reiterate is, like you said, like just connecting with people, but I guess through a different lens of like language wise, because like you were saying, like I personally don't speak any other language apart from English, which I know my parents are definitely annoyed about because they'd like me to speak some native language of Nigeria. But one day I'll be able to say that I can. But what's really great about like connecting to someone on a like language level is, I guess it's amazing when like I don't know, the person I guess doesn't expect you to speak their language and then you just come out and say it. So I mentioned it before on previous episodes that my dad can speak like different languages within Nigeria. And like he said, he just does it. And I always find it funny because like people, I guess, who might not necessarily expect him to speak their languages, especially like if it's like a cab driver or someone he meets, they might say something in like the language and he'll be like, oh yeah, how are you? And they're just like, wait, what? You speak the language? And yeah, there's like loads of videos. Like there was this white guy I saw on Instagram once, and he was like going around to different places. So like he went to I think he went to a Japanese restaurant or supermarket, and then he was like speaking like fluent Japanese. He went to like a Nigerian supermarket, and there were people there who speak one of the languages, Yoruba, and he like spoke fluently, and they were just like, wait, what? So yeah, so I feel like that's one of the things that I definitely personally like always, and I'm trying to, I've got my Duolingo Spanish lessons coming in. I'm trying to learn some languages, so when I do, like, I guess, start traveling again, I can say, at least, I might not be able to say I'm a master, but I can say that I can still say a few phrases.
Yeah, I think the language barrier is definitely a love-hate relationship, because you want to learn, you want to immerse yourself, but at the same time, sometimes it's like, I really just want to get this done. I'm really hungry. I want to order my food. And it's like finding that balance. But again, when you connect to people, and especially if you find someone that doesn't mind you butchering their language and correcting you, then you can really master another language. I also am not a master, but I learned French in Senegal solely from talking to people. I've never had a formal French class or a French book, but I just was talking to everyone, and my students. It was kind of a meet in the middle. Nobody really spoke English, but everybody spoke Wolof, and Wolof was just breaking my brain. So I was like, can we meet in the middle with French? Because the Latin-based languages, like, some words are similar and things like that. And so just learning languages through immersion is my favorite way. I've also tried Duolingo. I took Spanish lessons in high school and in elementary school, but it didn't ever stick. But when you're going somewhere and you need a toilet and you have to know the word for toilet, like, that's going to stick. That, okay, I don't want to be in an accident in the middle of the street because I can't pronounce the word for toilet in another country.
Yeah, that's so true. And even like you were saying about immersion, I think that's what my dad was saying. Like, even for, I guess, me and my siblings to learn Yoruba properly, he was saying that, if I guess, like, you were in Nigeria, like you're saying, like, you're in any country, and you might not necessarily have anyone that speaks, like you said, like, full English or can speak English fluently around you, then, like, you do start to, like, learn the language. And sometimes I think, like you said, that, like, I learned GCSE like Spanish and not Spanish, sorry, French and Japanese. But like what I was telling my like siblings about it, that to be honest, I don't really like, if I was to go to, France today, if I was to go to Japan today, I wouldn't be able to have a conversation because, like you said, it doesn't stick with you because you don't use it. You only, like we said at the start, just only do it to pass the exam, to get a grade, and then it's just like, okay, cool, I'm just gonna get rid of that knowledge. But yeah,
like with languages, it's use it or lose it. Like when I was 100%. In Italy, I could have conversations. By the end of my 3 months, I was like keeping up at the dinner table, because at a certain point, I was like, look, you've had a long day. We're not going to speak English at dinner tonight. I was like, it's fine. I'm trying to follow along in the conversation. Like, I don't know what's happening. I'm just going to eat my food and go to bed. But after a while, like, the Italian was gone. And now, like, the other day, somebody asked me how to say, like, thank you or something. And I was like, it was hurting my brain to dig that deep to find the translation in Italian. But it really is use it or lose it. And so, like, I still speak French on a regular. It's very broken, and a French person would probably not be happy with me. But just speaking French and speaking Creole in Haiti, like, those languages are now, like, in the top of my brain, and I don't want to lose them. So I'm trying to use it so I don't lose it, because Korean is kind of gone now. Italian is gone. And so I don't want to keep getting really to like a functional level and then going back to zero, getting functional and then going back to zero. So that's my goal, is to also be a polyglot, because there's so many out here and I'm just like, I know 1.5 kind of. So that's one of my goals too.
Oh, no, that's perfect. And I guess that nicely leads on to everyone's favorite section of the podcast, MC of the Month. And today's MC of the Month are an organization that do amazing work. They're called Child to Child. And essentially, they're an international child's rights agency located, I guess, for our Londoners, at the Institute of Education that's run by the University of London and UCL in London. And essentially, they do really great work because they help to train like global agencies to enable children to play a meaningful role in their own lives and promote the health, education, and well-being of themselves and their communities. Some of the great work that they do is they actually get children to teach other children, which, as a person who like worked with a youth group when I was growing up, and I was doing that as well. Like, it is really fun to be able to teach children, like, when you're a child, because obviously, like, you understand at that age, like what's the best way to communicate things? I could come up with a lesson plan now, which, might work for some classes, it might not, but, like you said, someone at that age will be able to be like, oh yeah, I can include like you said, like clips from The Office, and I can, I know people have watched The Office in my class, so they'll enjoy it and stuff like that. So yeah, they do a lot of amazing work, and their principles are I'm sure, as everyone would agree, are very important. Developing children's decision making and problem solving abilities in order to take action on identified priorities within their community. Develop children's ability to communicate and emphasize and cope with difficult situations and circumstances. And yeah, they've got amazing work. I don't want to list it all here. The link to their website will be in the description, and will be one of the chapter markers, so you're more than welcome to look on their website and see that. But yeah, they're essentially our MC of the month, and yeah, feel free to check out their website and see if you want to get involved. You can check out, because there are some opportunities on there as well. Yeah, that nicely leads us to the end of today's episode. I want to thank Jash for being a great guest host. It's been great to have you on the podcast. Now, before we let you go, in typical fashion, our listeners might be thinking, wow, this person is amazing. I want to know a bit more about her. I want to see some of these social media clips that she's uploading. I want to even maybe check out her website. So what is the best way for anyone listening to essentially find out more about you?
Okay, so I'm everywhere at I am J Ashley, IAMJASHLEY, on Instagram, TikTok. I just started TikTok, so I'm kind of learning another platform, but like, wow, there's so much stuff on there. Okay, but anyway, and I also have a website, the same thing, IamJAshley.com, and that's really where all the information is. The social media, they get little clips because, there's character limits and stuff like that, but I write everything I want to say on my blog, and it's also a lot of information and tips on whether you want to teach abroad, if you want to get into remote work and being a digital nomad. And there's also information about each country I've lived in. So I have a guide on how to teach abroad. It goes through all the steps, because I know from experience doing a deep dive internet search can be very overwhelming. And so I said, okay, there needs to be a better way to do this. And the same thing for remote work. Everybody's like, get into tech today and work from anywhere. But how? So I just want to create resources for people to be able to travel and be able to still make money or even travel for free. So that's kind of what my platform is about. And then just sharing my crazy experiences, because some of the shit can I say shit? Is this? Sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Some of the stuff that happens to me is just I can't make it up. So I have to do my story time to talk about these different experiences so that I can make the mistakes and somebody after me can kind of avoid those situations. So yes, you can check me out. You can send me a DM, send me an email. I respond to all of it. Maybe not immediately, but I respond to everything. So definitely reach out. I'm always a resource. If you want to pick my brain, ask some questions, I'm here.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm sure, our listeners are very interested. I've seen some of the videos that you've uploaded. They are very, very fun, very engaging, and really great. So I'm sure our listeners will love to check that out. And as always, thank you everyone for listening or watching. We really appreciate all your support. If you like the video, then a like, comment, subscribe is always appreciated. Click that bell notification so you don't miss the next episode. And essentially, if you're interested, please join our Patreon page, because we always appreciate our Patreon members. And yeah, that's essentially it. Thanks everyone for joining the conversation today. We wish you all the best, and yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. Pick up the mic. Bye everyone.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.